We're going to continue with Mr. Tushman. It starts on page 58. The last month in school was awful. It's not like anyone was out and out mean to me, but I felt iced out by Amos and Henry and Miles. I just didn't feel popular anymore. No one really ever laughed at my jokes. No one wanted to hang out with me. I felt like I could disappear from the school and nobody would miss me. Meanwhile, Auggie was walking down the hallways like some cool dude, getting high-fived by all the jocks in the upper grades. Whatever. Mr. Tushman called me into his office one day. "How's it going, Julian?" he asked me. "Fine." "Did you ever write that apology letter I asked you to write?" "My dad says I'm leaving the school so I don't have to write anything," I answered. "Oh," he said, nodding. "I guess I was hoping you'd want to write it on your own." "Why?" I said back. "Everyone thinks I'm this big dirtbag now anyway. What the heck is writing a letter going to accomplish?" "Julian." "Look, I know everyone thinks I'm this unfeeling kid who doesn't feel remorse," I said, using air quotes. "Julian," said Mr. Tushman, "no one—" And then suddenly I felt like I was about to cry, so I just interrupted him. "I'm really late for class, and I don't want to get in trouble, so can I go, please?" Mr. Tushman looked sad. He nodded. Then I left his office without looking back. A few days later, we received an official notice from the school telling us that they had withdrawn their invitation to re-enroll in the fall. I didn't think it mattered since Dad had told them we weren't going back anyway, but we still hadn't heard from any other schools that I had applied to, and if I didn't get into any of them, we had planned on my going back to Beecher Prep, but now that was impossible. Mom and Dad were furious at the school, like crazy mad, mostly because they had already paid the tuition for the next year in advance, and the school wasn't planning on returning the money. See, that's the thing with private schools. They can kick you out for any reason. Luckily, a few days later, we did find out that I had gotten into my first choice private school, not far from where I lived. I'd have to wear a uniform, but that was okay. Better than having to go to Beecher Prep every day. Needless to say, we skipped the graduation ceremony at the end of the year. Boys and girls, this chapter is called Summer Vacation. My parents and I went to Paris in June. The original plan was that we would return to New York in July since I was supposed to go to rock and roll camp with Henry and Miles. But after everything that happened, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. My parents let me stay with my grandmother for the rest of the summer. Usually, I hated staying with Grandmère, but I was okay about it this time. I knew that after my parents were home, I could spend the entire day in my PJs playing Halo, and Grandmère wouldn't care in the least. I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. Grandmère wasn't exactly the typical grandma type. No baking cookies for Grandmère. No knitting sweaters. She was, as Dad always said, something of a character. Even though she was in her 80s, she dressed like a fashion model. Super glamorous. Lots of makeup and perfume, high heels. She never woke up until 2 in the afternoon, and then she'd take at least 2 hours to get dressed. Once she was up, she would take me out shopping or to a museum or a fancy restaurant. She wasn't into doing kid stuff, if you know what I mean. She'd never sit through a PG movie with me, for instance, so I ended up seeing a lot of movies that were totally age inappropriate. Mom, I knew, would go completely ballistic if she got wind of some of the movies that Grandmère took me to see. But Grandmère was French and was always saying to my parents that they were too American anyway. Grandmère didn't talk to me like I was a little kid. Even when I was younger, she never used baby words or talked to me the way grown-ups usually talk to little kids. She used to say regular words to describe me. She would say things like even curse words sometimes too. Boy, she could curse. And I didn't know what a curse word meant. Well, if I didn't know what it meant, all I had to do was ask her and she would explain it to me. In detail. I can't even tell you some of the words she explained to me. Anyway, I was hoping to be away from NYC for the whole summer. I was hoping that I would get all those kids out of my head. Augie, Jack, Summer, Henry, Miles, all of them. If I never saw any of those kids again, seriously, I would be the happiest kid in Paris. I'm going to stop there. Thanks for listening today.